August 17th, 2021. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, this meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20. No public attendance will be permitted in person. The public can access this meeting via WebEx technology, and until further notice, Burlington School Committee will hear public comment virtually only. Meetings are also broadcast live on Burlington Cable Access TV. For those who are looking for the WebEx connection, the meeting number access code is 179-997-5715, and the meeting password is Tuesday. Now, the first order on our agenda this evening is an executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Subsection 2. The purpose is to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Specifically, we're going to be discussing in executive session the school superintendent's contract. I expect this executive session to last maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes, somewhere in that ballpark, at which time we'll come back in and go back into public session for the rest of our agenda. So at this time, the chair will entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Martha, seconded by Carl,
Chris. Moved by Chris.
That was
seconded
Christine,
by Carl.
sorry. Seconded by Carl. Catherine?
Aye.
Christine?
Aye.
Martha?
Aye.
Carl?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and we are now in executive session. Okay, good evening, everybody. Once again, we're back into public session, and we're going to rejoin the public meeting agenda. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the warrant. Can we turn down our volumes? And also a reminder to people at home, please keep your computers muted unless you're actually speaking. Approval of the warrant. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the warrant as submitted.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair abstains, 401. Next item is approval of the minutes of both the June 22nd meeting and the July 20th meeting. We'll do the June 22nd first. There's a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes of June 22nd. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? That passes 500. And now the meeting of July 20th, 2021.
So moved.
Moved and
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes of July 20, 2021. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair will abstain because I was not present, so 401. Next on our agenda is public participation. Just so people out there know, public participation is for somebody who wants to speak on an issue that's not otherwise on our agenda. I assume there are quite a few people who may want to speak on some of the items that are on our agenda, specifically the mask policy and vaccines and things of that nature. And I'm going to ask you to make comments on, or wait to make comments on that until we reach those items on our agenda. If there is anybody present who wants to address the committee on something that's not on our agenda, this is the opportunity to do so. So, Mr. Kuna is monitoring the remote participants. You can raise your hand physically, and also I think you can do it by hitting the right button and.
Hover over your
The
name.
person on the screen has their hand up. It is.
Okay. So in any event, Bob will monitor that for us and will make me aware of people who want to speak. So anybody? Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Eileen, how are you?
Okay, that's okay.
Go ahead, you're on.
Good evening, hi, good evening, everyone. This is Eileen Sickler. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 4. And I know you have a big agenda, so I'll try to keep it brief. I first want to recall some comments that Mrs. Monaco made a few weeks ago about making sure that every kid, every student who wanted a seat on the bus had one. I think that's great, and I totally agree with her that that should happen. I also want to bring up the Bar Youth Transportation Survey that they did a few months ago. They had about 1,200 respondents, and that was between the middle school and the high school. And 54% of those kids said they did not take the bus either to or from the school. And that translates into about 640 seats, 640 kids. I mean, I know that there was COVID and all that, you know, it could be coming around for a second time, but regardless, I think, you know, if you need other proof, just go to the high school and try to find a parking space. I mean, that lot is chock full and, you know, along the road and all that. So, so with that said, a couple of questions. How many fewer buses did we use last year? Especially with that large number of kids not taking the bus.
You want me to respond?
Bob, if you have the answer to that.
Last year, Mrs. Sickler, we did not use any fewer buses than we normally do. We have 18 buses on our contract.
So, I mean, okay, so that takes me to my second question. So do you know what the utilization rate was?
We pay a daily rate, first of all, which doesn't answer your question, but it will. So while we do see lower utilization on the high school, we also have less buses allocated for the high school. So we only use 9 buses for the high school, but the other 18 buses are used not only to finish off the 3rd tier, which is Francis Wyman at the same time as the high school, but the 18 buses are used for both other tiers, for the middle school and 3 elementary schools prior to.
And again, Ms. Sickler, just through the chair. Utilization last year would be a really difficult year to model because we were forced to run the buses at about a 33% capacity because of this, because of the spacing we needed on the bus. So we displaced lots of students who would be on the bus. When the restrictions on bus capacity were lifted, I think a lot of families had already factored in how to get their children to school, and many of the families weren't convinced that riding the bus was going to continue to be safe. So I just think when we're looking at the bus capacity, and we have the BAR survey, we are looking at that in terms of as we're preparing our bus services, and we're continuing. We do have Safe Routes to School on the agenda tonight, so we do have some work going on. But last year's utilization was, it would be hard for us to use that as a model in terms of anything that we were doing because of the restrictions on capacity.
So that's, thanks, Dr. Cuddy. But so that's a good segue into, have we sent out surveys or questionnaires to the parents to understand what the ridership demand is?
I don't believe we've done a survey on the ridership demand in a while. I think we've been tasked to make sure that we have a seat for every child who, a seat for every child available, you know, is what we've, is how we are designed and modeled.
You're cutting out a little bit. I know Mrs. Bond brought it up at the last meeting, and it didn't seem to get much traction. And no pun intended. So, but I didn't know why, because it would seem like that's, you know, now's the perfect time to figure that out. And if we can save $366, you know, a bus a day or whatever it is, that would be terrific. And still make sure that everyone has a seat on the bus.
Again, Mr. Chair, we can certainly
Yeah.
set up a follow-up call with Ms. Sickler and.
Yeah, that, I mean, your question is appropriate, and I think your point is well taken. And it's something we'll continue to look at, and we can certainly circle back with you, but I don't want to have a prolonged give and take on bus policy and all of that. That's obviously not on the agenda tonight. We do have a lot of other things, so.
No, I get that. It just would be helpful, I would think, to you all to understand what the demands are.
Yeah, we periodically have done these types of discussions, I know, over the years, and sometimes the problem with it's a fluid. Somebody who might not want the bus tomorrow might all of a sudden need it next month because of some reason for one thing or another. So we've always erred on the side of caution to make sure the seat's available. But we'll certainly look into it. I know it kind of goes hand in hand with the program that we just entered into. So I think that's all part of the deal, but it's not something that's going to happen overnight, and certainly not before the start of school this year. So we'll just have to continue to keep looking at it. But your suggestion's a good one.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else out there for public participation? Items not on our agenda? Okay, thank you. Next item is information and reports.
I do something on Comcast, 1115.
Oh, on Newsmax?
Yeah.
Folks, could you mute your machine online? Thank you. Information reports, subcommittee reports. Anybody have any subcommittee reports they want to bring forward? Martha?
I don't specifically have a subcommittee report, but last year when Sarah Shake was our student representative, she would often give us a subcommittee, a report on the district-wide equity committee. And I know there's a number, I'm interested in what the work they're doing, and I know there's other people in the community who are interested in the work they're doing. So I would like to make a request, Dr. Conti, that perhaps Mr. Larkin, whoever is regularly attending those, could give us a report, whatever month, once a month, or, I don't know how often they're meeting, but maybe we could get a report on the equity committee that's ongoing in the district.
Mr. Chair, this might be a bit of a longer conversation, and maybe we should add it again to a future agenda.
Okay, that's
this time.
fine.
And my only comment back is equity work isn't a subcommittee. It's the entire work of the district, and it's really, I think we have to discuss how we talk about equity, because what I would say is if you're going to be looking at a district improvement plan that should be built on a foundation of equity, we can certainly talk about what some of our efforts in the area of equity are, but I don't want to present it as the responsibility of a few. I want to talk about it in terms of all of our responsibility, and I guess I would say I'm the chief equity officer in the district, and I know exactly what you're saying, and I'm not being critical. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page about
I mean, if we
how
could
we
have
talk about it.
regular reports from someone
Yeah.
about sort of the work that's moving forward, because I know there's a lot going on, and I think there's a lot of people in the community that would like to hear about it.
And I guess what I'm hoping you'll see is those efforts in everything that we talk
Okay,
about.
great.
But I think we probably need to differentiate that a little bit as we do moving forward. But I just, again, want to reaffirm for the committee, it's not something extra that we're doing, it's just what we should be doing. And I know I'm not explaining that well, but
No, that makes sense.
I'll do better.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other subcommittees reporting? No, not seeing any. Ways and Means, is Roger on the call? Roger Riggs?
Yeah, I'm here, but I don't have anything that's not on the agenda.
Thanks, Roger. Anybody have any questions for Roger? No. Assignment of school committee members to new town committees. Transportation Subcommittee, Diversity and Equity, and Inclusion Subcommittees.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, just to move along in your packets, there was the posting from the town for both of those committees. And I won't read the entire posting, but just to talk about very quickly, the Burlington Select Board has recently established a subcommittee to look further into the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because of the wide-reaching implications of this topic, we are seeking 2 residents from the community to volunteer to serve as stakeholders along with members of department and community committees. This is an ad hoc committee that will report back to the Select Board in 1 year's time. Again, if you are interested, there's a website to be provided. The charge of the committee is to evaluate and develop a framework for DEI subcommittee from which several strategic initiatives and actionable items can be developed and presented to the select board. So that would be the ad hoc Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee. It's a new committee proposed by the select board, and they would like representation from the school committee.
Okay. I understand Catherine was interested in the Transportation Subcommittee.
Right, and I already applied,
Okay.
and I believe the deadline has already gone past to apply for both,
Okay.
so.
But I think they did specifically ask for school committee representatives, so they will take whoever we
I
appoint.
spoke with Betty McDonough, and she said that after this meeting would be fine.
Yeah,
So and given that that whoever goes will be representing us, I thought it was important for us to support that.
right.
And I would certainly support your representing this, just like we vote in this, the reorganization of subcommittees and things, yearly at least, and so I would support you being our representative
Okay.
on that committee. And I thought it was important for the committee to have that conversation.
No, I agree. So Catherine's interested in transportation. How about the diversity?
If no one else is 100% eager like me, I would love to volunteer my voice
Okay.
and
I'm certainly eager, but I'm but I'm supporting you doing that,
Okay.
so.
yes, I did.
Okay, good.
I just wanted to make a correction, the deadline's the end of the month.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Great. So I
Okay, so,
support those two representatives.
If we're all in agreement, then as chair, I will appoint Carl as our representative to the Diversity Subcommittee, and I'll appoint Catherine as our representative to the Transportation Subcommittee. You can contact, I'll send Betty McDonough a note just to let her know, but,
Good.
There's something to fill out online.
yeah, it's probably paperwork, and then she'll contact you, I'm sure, once the meeting's starting to get scheduled and whatnot.
Good luck with that work.
All right, continuing on, item 7, coronavirus update from the superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are some subcommittee topics or some subtopics to get to, so masking is next. But the first topic is the opening of school and Board of Health. So I did speak with Dr. Weiner and Susan Luminello. I know Patrick's been attending the meetings and speaking to folks regularly. Patrick, are you on the call?
Looks like it.
Yes.
There he is.
I think you've had several conversations, and you're going to be attending the Board of Health meeting on Tuesday, the 24th. And again, I may attend with Patrick, but there'll be school administrative representation at the Board of Health meeting. And I think Dr. Weiner was going to have a conversation about masking as well, and vaccinations as well. Patrick, is that correct? Plus, we're just receiving the protocols. You just received some more today, so that things are happening very quickly.
Yeah, that's correct. And some contradictory guidance between some plans that DESE had been making and the DPH have been removed as of some guidance today. So we have another call, actually an in-person meeting scheduled with Susan on Monday afternoon, Susan Luminello. I just want to, again, as last year, publicly thank Susan Luminello, Chris Pollock, and the Board of Health in Burlington for all of their guidance and support during last year. And we've already been in contact multiple times heading into this year.
And Patrick, we had that just today. I know you're finalizing the details, but you may want to mention that under this topic item.
Yes, I want to thank Barbara Conley, our nurse leader. We have a tentative plan, should have more details posted tomorrow, to do a vaccine clinic for our students and any parents that would like to get vaccinated that haven't been vaccinated yet. Will happen at the high school on Monday afternoon, and then 3 weeks later, people have the opportunity to get their second shot. So again, the details will be finalized for that tomorrow, but we're excited to offer that opportunity in the schools.
So again, just wanted to, on the committee, that we are in regular communication with Susan Luminello and the Board of Health, and we will be attending there'll be school representation at the Board of Health meeting on Tuesday, the 24th.
I'm actually going to be there that night as well, so.
Okay, so, great, you can participate.
Okay. Opening of school 2021 Board of Health update. Item B, MASC face coverings policy.
Okay, so in your packets, you were provided with an updated Massachusetts Association of School Committees policy regarding masking. We provided you the policy that you passed last year, and then MASC updated the policy, and we provided you with the updated policy, and they just changed, again, a few items on their updated policy. So I just wanted to read some of the background. MASC has updated their policy for face coverings to reflect new guidance documents received from the CDC, DESE, and the Department of Public Health, as well as updates. We updated the text to reflect the recommendations made by those three agencies, and the changes are highlighted in the policy. I also wanted to speak to the intentions because I've been getting lots of emails, and some of them are speaking to my intentions, and I just want to make sure that the only one who knows my intentions actually is me, and so I want to be clear about what my intentions are. Last year, we were having conversations about getting kids into school as frequently as possible, 5 days a week. We spent a lot of our effort there. The intention of this policy and the recommendation of this policy to require masks indoors is to keep students in person for 5 days a week. That's really what our goal was last year. And masks are a mitigation factor that will help keep students in school. Again, my suggestion is that we revisit this policy every month to determine whether conditions have changed enough to end the requirement and to keep students in school, again, 5 days a week. That should always be our goal. In-person learning. I don't like wearing masks. I don't mind telling you. I want to have the students out of their masks as soon as possible. But I feel like the best way to keep students in school learning is to have them in masks when they are indoors. We will build in frequent mask breaks as we did in the spring. And we're not asking that students wear masks outside. So we'll try to have, while the weather is good, we'll try to have as many mask breaks as possible. I do want to also remind parents that if they're sending children on the bus to school or riding home from school, that it's a federal requirement that all students must be masked in school buses. So that's not a Burlington decision, that's not a Massachusetts decision, that's a federal requirement that all students will be wearing masks. So again, I recommend the school committee approve the updated face coverings policy, and again, in our policy manual, it would be policy EBCFA. And again, the result of this policy will be a continuation of our current practice, which we have really asked people to wear masks indoors starting on August 7th, I believe, on a Monday, and when indoors unless working in isolation. So we would just be extending that to educators and students as they arrive. And again, the intention of this policy is to keep students in school in person 5 days a week. And that's what we'd like to do.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify for people who are on the call, the official item on our agenda this evening is adopting a face coverings policy. We have a policy book that's as thick as the Manhattan phone book, and all the things that, all the policies that we have to deal with are contained in that. And we're modifying the existing face covering policy to adjust for some changes that have been made that Dr. Conti just described. How the district chooses to set restrictions in accordance with the policy is a separate item. They kind of go hand in hand as we're talking this evening, but I just wanted people to understand that adopting the policy is just something that we do fairly standardly from time to time. As circumstances change, we adjust policies accordingly. Making the decision that's been proposed tonight by Dr. Conti is the district acting within the rights under the policy, or the authority given under the policy. I assume that there are people here who want to speak to this issue, and we're obviously willing to allow anybody who wants to speak to be heard. The only thing I would remind everybody is we have speaking of policies, our public participation policy is 3 minutes. So anybody who wants to speak, I would just ask you to keep that in mind, and I'm going to try to monitor that as best we can, because we do have a busy agenda. The other thing I'll just make everybody aware of, as chair, I have a certain amount of discretion. If 30 people say the exact same thing and the 31st person wants to repeat it, I have the authority to maybe move things along a bit. So I try not to do that unless it becomes necessary to do so, and please don't take it personally if I have to do that, but we've all been receiving quite a few emails, I know, and other kind of communications, so we understand that there are people with different opinions, and we've probably are all well aware of the arguments on both sides of this and understand the frustrations of people involved both ways. So again, we're happy and willing, obviously, to listen to everybody and allow people to be heard, but at some point, if it becomes too repetitive, then I might elect to move along a bit. So with those two things being said, before the, what's that? I think I'd rather hear from the public first, and then the committee can.
I'd like to make one comment.
Sure.
Which is that I just wanted to state in advance that I know one concern is for students with special needs, and they're certainly, I feel they're addressed, those issues are addressed in the policy. And also, I just wanted to point out that we do, as a district, have smile masks for the teachers and professionals who need them, which means that there's a clear area where kids can see the teacher's mouth moving. And I don't know if everybody knew that, so I wanted to add that information.
Yeah, thank you. So anybody who would like to speak, I'd ask you to raise your hand electronically, and Mr. Kuna is going to try to monitor it as best he can. If hopefully we'll be able to get everybody, and if you think you've raised your hand but you're not getting called on, wave your hand or something like that, we'll find you. In any event, Bob, why don't you call the names? And
Barbara Martinez, if I said that name correctly.
Barbara Martinez?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Barbara, welcome, Barbara, and floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hi, as you said, my name is Barbara Martinez, and I'm a parent to 2 children in BPS. I'm speaking today first to express my gratitude for the measured and careful responses that Burlington Public Schools have taken during the pandemic to protect all Burlington families, including the amazing educators and school staff who've risen above and beyond during this pandemic. The school committee is no doubt receiving passionate letters from parents regarding masks, vaccines, and in-person versus remote school. While our positions on these things may be different, the truth is that we're all driven by the same purpose. We all want the very best for our children and to ensure they feel supported, empowered, and encouraged to be their fullest selves, both inside and outside of school. We might have different opinions on how to achieve this, but recognizing what we have in common hopefully can help us come together in pursuit of our shared goal. I'm grateful for Dr. Conti and the school committee's efforts to ensure that in-person school will be available for our children this year, and that they're following the science by requiring the use of masks in schools. Some states with no mask mandates have already seen schools open and close due to COVID outbreaks. None of us want that to happen here in Burlington. We want our children to have a safe, healthy, and stable school year. Masks are a critical tool to help us achieve this. I recently lost a friend to COVID. She was 42 years old, brilliant and funny, and a mom to 3 children the same ages as my own. The grief that these girls are experiencing is beyond my ability to express with words. If masks can spare even one child, parent, or loved one in our community from this fate, then we should know that masking up for one another in school is the right thing to do. I believe that here in Burlington, we're capable of doing hard things. I believe in a Burlington that takes care of one another. In addition to masks, I hope our schools work with our children on understanding the intrinsic and extraordinary power we all have to protect our community. In a time when we have so many people feeling helpless, it can perhaps be empowering to instead realize we are the helpers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Barbara.
Again, I'm going to go in the order. Sorry. I'm going to go in the order that I saw the hands raised.
Sure.
So Mark Steffen.
Mark Steffen.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time. Yes. Hi, my name's Mark Steffen. I've been a resident in this town for about 40 years. I have twin girls who are going to be entering 8th grade this year, as well as another girl who's going to be entering 6th grade. And I'm coming before you to ask you to please reconsider the mask mandate for the upcoming school year that starts in 2 weeks. A couple of weeks ago, I did see the letter that was sent out talking about the masking protocol for the upcoming fall. I realized it was going against what DESE was recommending as far as only recommending masks for kids under 6th grade who are unvaccinated and those who were 12 and up and who had already been vaccinated not requiring masks. I've seen data showing that as of August 12th, it said 54% of kids ages 12 to 15 had already been fully vaccinated in town, and kids 16 to 19 had reached close to 70%. The vaccine has been available to everybody since April, and according to the letter that was sent out, these mandates aren't going to be lifted in schools until we reach about 90% vaccination rate. I've spoken to many parents over the last few weeks and over the last few months who just aren't comfortable with their kids getting the COVID vaccine, especially considering the extremely low number of children who have died from it in the United States. Last I saw, it was just over 400 in a country with 75 million kids under the age of 18. All of the children that had died had pre-existing conditions such as leukemia. We have 160 million Americans who have been fully vaccinated, and the number of breakthrough cases for people who have been vaccinated is about 0.098%. The majority of the spike that we've been seeing around the country, as I've been seeing it, has been coming from the unvaccinated, not the vaccinated. Boston.com said we'd had about 100 breakthrough cases of death of fully vaccinated people in Massachusetts, and the average age of those people were 82.5, and they all had pre-existing conditions. Governor Baker even came out and said the other day that when you compare Massachusetts to the rest of the nation, our vaccination rate is much lower, and our vaccination rate is much higher, and our hospitalization rate is much lower. With the 8th lowest rate of COVID cases per capita in the US and 3rd lowest per capita for hospitalization rate. And kids, even before getting vaccinated, are the lowest age group in the planet. It's actually almost non-existent when you look at the number of kids who've died versus the number of kids who we have in the country. You're never going to be able to completely eliminate all the risks, and I'm asking for the ability to at least send my children to school without a mask. I know they've been hanging around inside and outside with kids maskless the entire summer. And I know that in a couple of weeks, they're going to be seeing these same kids in school with masks. And I'm just asking for the ability to send my kids who have been hanging around outside and inside unvaccinated to school without school permission. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Bob?
Next on my list is Christina Sorensen.
Christina Sorensen.
Hi, good evening. My name is Christina Sorensen. I'm a psychology student with a focus on child trauma and mental illness. I've been a Burlington resident for the majority of my life, and I have a 10-year-old son who has attended Burlington Public Schools since kindergarten. I would like to speak on his behalf and for all the parents who wish to be given individual choice over the recent mask mandate. My son is highly sensitive and emotional. As his parent, I treat that as a wonderful gift and character trait. He's always mindful, helpful, and always kind. He's always been enthusiastic about school. Every year he talks about how we got the best teacher and consistently shows so much growth and potential. Following the school closings in 2020, we were forced to step out of our comfort zones and switch to remote learning like so many others. Given the circumstances and the shocking fear that was COVID, we were happy to do so. We quarantined, we wore masks when required, we were mindful that we were taking the necessary steps to protect ourselves and others. Before his 4th grade year began, he expressed how uncomfortable he was with the fact that he would have to wear a mask all day. It gave him bad headaches, made it hard to breathe, and even harder for him to focus. As parents, we make sacrifices to do what's best for our kids, no matter what that may mean. We have to move to the forefront of our priorities. His father and I made that decision to be fully remote for the school year. There were days where we felt helpless, like we couldn't keep up, and more often than not, my heart broke for the lack of in-person socialization that's so essential to social and psychological development. But every day he was grateful to be able to learn without feeling uncomfortable or restricted, and he could apply himself. And by the end of the school year, he had made friends with his classmates and was so proud. This past summer, he was in camp for 3 weeks, unmasked, and was so optimistic about his upcoming 5th grade year. When we received the notification that Burlington was mandating masks for his school and sat down to talk about it, he was really looking forward to everything with no remote or hybrid options that we weren't given. The mood changed from excited to nervous and scared. Every child learns differently. Every child thrives differently. Every child requires something different. In these past 6 months, CDC guidance has gone from mask up to masks aren't too effective and back again. Massachusetts has one of the highest vaccination rates. I understand fully that there will always be new variants, new threats, and new data. I don't claim to have the answer. However, I do know that mandating a face covering for the least vulnerable age group of our population is not it. I believe every parent and child should have the right to choose what is best and most comfortable for them. If your child wearing a mask makes you feel less afraid and more protected, by all means, you should have your child wear a mask. But please don't impose your will on others. Some children can't breathe with masks on. Some children can't focus with masks on. And this is not a one-size-fits-all situation. To strongly encourage masks would be a better solution. So I'd like to ask you to please consider withdrawing this mandate. Thank you for allowing me a chance to speak.
Thank you, Christina. Bob?
Eric Zola, Z-O-L-A.
Eric Zola.
Erica, I'm sorry.
Hi.
Erica.
Erica, I'm sorry.
My apologies.
Hi. So my name is Erica Zola. I'm born and raised here in Burlington. I'm raising now my 3 children here. I have 2 attending Fox Hill in the fall, where I attended myself. I want to echo a lot of my, community member Ms. Sorensen's statements, as well as Mr. Stevens' statements as well. And I implore you to make the mask decision a parental choice. In regards to that, we have to stay away from the inflammatory rhetoric that we're constantly hearing, whether it be news, social media, many outlets say, there's a surge, hospitals overwhelmed. We can't focus on that leading our decision. The CDC, DPH, all of those institutions provide guidance, which is just that, because each community has, different issues in regarding to COVID. Our community, thankfully, is not seeing a surge of the Delta variant. We have had no spread amongst our children. They have been unmasked in our school, in theater camps over the summer, in other camps throughout town over the summer. And I know others will speak to this as well, but the data does not show that a cloth mask is an effective tool against COVID, especially amongst young children, where their viral load is so minimal to none, as well as them actually catching COVID and being ill from COVID. That again, the mask really should be a parental choice. I can also speak to the fact that I do have a child who has hearing loss. He was born that way. It will never change. And I know that this was brought up in the beginning of the meeting, where it was mentioned that smile masks are provided. But I can tell you, as a child with hearing loss, and his school being aware of that, his teacher did not wear a smile mask last year. And this isn't to throw anybody under the bus, what he or she should have, could have, would have done, but it's factual. This is what my experience has been for my child and what his experience has been. With the COVID protocols and the mask, I can't even, with the limited time, I will spare going into what he has lost. But with the hearing aids amplify sound, they don't siphon and filter sound. With the inability to read lips, and it's not just for the hearing impaired, but for all young students trying to learn social cues, phonics, blending sounds, consonant sounds, without the ability to clearly hear those sounds, which is muffled by the mask, windows open, doors open for airflow, the purifiers in the room. There's a lot of other sounds in the room that I understand for protocol, but when you layer on the mask on top of that, these children cannot hear and learn adequately these important first years of education that they cannot get back. I mean, my son will be in second grade. He's missed a half a year of kindergarten and, a good portion of last year with a lot of what happened. So we have second graders that really aren't where they should be learning wise. And the mask is going to continue to hinder these formative years of their learning by not being able to hear and see clearly. As well as what happens is when they're in their mask for the 6 hours during the day, understandably with breaks in between, but if they're missing lesson cues or social cues and the like, it becomes a behavior issue for the student because they're still young, and it becomes a frustration for them, which then becomes a behavior and is sometimes misunderstood.
I hate to do this, but I gotta jump in. You went beyond the 3 minutes. I'm okay with giving you time to finish your thought, but I just ask that you bring it to a close.
Okay, well, like I said, the protocols that they say are in place for special needs students do not, in fact, always happen. And I would implore you to reconsider your decision and make it parental choice and allow teachers to be able to teach certain instruction unmasked, um, which I think can be safely done with our staff being vaccinated. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Bob?
Sean Cashman.
Sean Cashman, if you're out there.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sean Cashman. I've been a resident of Burlington since 2013. I have one child entering fifth grade at Memorial and one entering kindergarten. I wanted to express my concern for the mask mandate put in place for the upcoming school year. My oldest son, who is on an IEP, suffers from ADHD and anxiety. He struggles in school regularly as it is. With the COVID restrictions last school year, he had the absolute worst year so far. Despite having a fantastic teacher and dedicated staff, he struggled more than ever. This was due to physical activity being restricted by having to cover his mouth and nose, restricting his breathing, not being able to talk at lunch or even turn his head to see his friends, having non-contact games and activities at gym class and recess, games like tag or touch football, and general anxiety, social and emotional, of having his breathing, talking, and facial expressions restricted. My son is a very social and athletic child. He survives the academic part of the school day by looking forward to physical activity and socialization with his classmates. Policies that restrict his ability to thrive in school are contradictory to the mission of teaching and are seriously affecting his mood, attitude, and mental well-being at home and at school. My youngest son is entering kindergarten at Memorial. Like his big brother, he is a shy and somewhat anxious kid. He's very smart, but there are definitely some concerns we have about his growth as a student. I'm very concerned about him learning to read while the teacher is masked and he can't see how her mouth moves as she pronounces words, or hear her correctly to determine how his words should sound. Clear masks, in my opinion, do not work. I've seen them, I've used them, they fog up. I don't think that's a good option. Also, the teacher won't be able to hear him appropriately and how he pronounces words or how his mouth moves when he pronounces them. As I said, he's shy and doesn't speak loudly as it is. Wearing a mask all day will only make that worse. I also worry about his socialization. Like his brother, I suspect that the social aspect of school will be a big part of his day. I can't imagine being a 5-year-old starting school with a new teacher and 19 new classmates whose faces you can't see. You won't see their expressions or reactions to him, and will only make socialization that much harder at a time when it should be easy. I can't imagine what his little mind will think when he has to face forward at lunch and eat alone with no talking. I don't know about other people's kids, but I know mine have to be reminded daily to perform regular hygienic practices. There is zero chance they're keeping their masks clean and off the ground, floor, desk, table, or other germ-ridden places. Putting them back on their face for the day is disgusting and opposite of healthy. I'm aware of the dangers of COVID. I work in a prison where we are in close quarters with people all day long from all walks of life. My family and I maintain hygiene and distance when necessary. We all know COVID is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. We need to learn to live with it safely, but not at the cost of children's mental health. People talk a lot about dangers of COVID to children, which from what I've seen is extremely low. What I don't hear people talking about is mental health issues in children, which from what I see is extremely high. I believe less than 400 children have died from COVID-related issues. Suicides in children are in the high thousands each year and continue to rise. Mental health is a serious concern that is being overlooked. I ask now, along with many like-minded people in our town, that you consider the mental health and as well as the physical health of our children, that you rescind the mask mandate for school children, that instead make the masking optional for those that choose to wear one, as well as those that choose not to. Let the parents decide what's best for their families. We have asked our children to be flexible for 18 months and through 2 school years.
Sean, I'm just going to jump in now. You've gone to 3. If you just want to wrap up your comments.
I'm wrapping up right now.
Thank you.
We've asked our children to be flexible for 18 months and through 2 school years. It's now time for us as parents to ask the same of you on behalf of our children who have suffered enough. Rescind the mandate. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Next up, I'm going to apologize prior to, but Jessica Nguib, if I said that wrong, I apologize.
Jessica, are you out there?
Yeah. Hi.
Hi, the floor is yours.
Okay. There it is. Okay. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm also a parent of 2 elementary age children. We're actually homeschooling this year, but on behalf of all the other parents still with kids in school, I also wanted to address the mask mandate and ask that it be removed. This will be the 3rd school year affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And I, along with many other concerned parents, believe that kids have suffered enough for a virus that they as a group are mostly immune from. From the start of the pandemic, about 423 children have died of COVID nationwide in a country with 75 million kids, representing less than 1% of all deaths. We are fortunate that Massachusetts has had 0 COVID-related deaths in anyone under the age of 18 since this all began. The evidence does not support masking our children, especially after they have had a relatively normal summer, interacting maskless with family and friends, in sports and summer camps, in stores, restaurants, and on vacations. It's now been 18 months since we started the 2 weeks to flatten the curve. What began as a united effort to prevent hospitals from becoming overburdened has now turned into a quest to eradicate a virus that will most likely always be with us, like the annual flu and cold viruses are, including other coronaviruses. 18 months of lockdowns, mask mandates, and now vaccines have shown us that despite our best efforts, this virus will continue to mutate and spread. Data is showing that the vaccinated can spread it just as much as the unvaccinated, so using vaccination rates as a benchmark for unmasking is not a sensible, data-driven solution. The good news is that we now have successful treatments that work, and vaccines are available to anyone over the age of 12 that wants one to hopefully prevent severe illness. With that being said, it's simply not rational to continue to wear masks indefinitely. The goalposts keep moving, so it doesn't seem like there's an end in sight. We have to accept the unpleasant reality that risk is everywhere in life. Children face many serious threats to their well-being, including other diseases, mental illness, accidents. Car crashes kill more than 1,000 young Americans every year, yet we've accepted that level of risk and we don't revisit it with every news headline about an accident. For our children in schools, we know that the risk from COVID is very low. For most kids who do get symptoms, it will manifest as a common cold. The flu is historically more dangerous to children, yet we've never taken such extreme measures to reduce risk. We can't continue to normalize what would otherwise be abnormal if confronting any other disease. Mandatory masking is not a solution that will bring real benefit, and it's not without cost to many children's well-being. Ultimately, we believe the decision should be left up to the parents and guardians whether or not to mask their child. I have no objection to anyone choosing to wear a mask or to get a vaccine, but we'd appreciate that same freedom to make decisions for our own families. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Jessica.
Thanks.
Bob?
Diana Marcus.
Hi, I'm a teacher here in Burlington, and I teach 6th grade computer science. I was
means that my students will come into sixth grade at 11 years old, and therefore they are not going to be able to be vaccinated, but will be in a school with 775 to 800 students. As a parent, my responsibility is for my children, absolutely. As a teacher, my responsibility is for everybody's children. And I am very concerned. I don't like teaching in a mask. I don't like wearing the mask so that I can't use my facial expressions to communicate with students. It's a bummer when kids are wearing masks because it's hard to see their facial expressions. But there is one thing I've been really fortunate about in 20 years of teaching, and that is I have never had a student die or a student end up being truly severely ill. My concern is, I realize I hear all these people saying, oh, it's a very small percentage of children who actually die from COVID. First of all, if it's your child, if it's your child's friend, then it doesn't matter whether it's one child or a million children. That child is a huge loss. Those children also go home to adults, grandparents, people who are immune compromised. But also, let's remember that the problem with parent decisions, the parent having a voluntary decision about whether or not they send their children to school with a mask or not, is that they're only looking at that point when you're with your own child. My concern is that when your child goes to school without a mask, there's a possibility that there's a child in that school who is immune compromised. We have lots of students who have battled cancer, who have lupus and MS and all sorts of things that make them more susceptible to any kind of disease. So it's not just about what makes an individual child comfortable. It's about us as a community coming together and saying, how do we keep every student safe? How do we make our school a place where everyone can come and be safe and to learn? I get it, masks stink. But you know what? Every time I go inside someplace these days, I put a mask on. I am fully vaccinated. I am surrounded by people that are fully vaccinated most of the time, but I do that because I don't know who else is there and what danger I'm putting them in. We are a community. Our students have an incredible capacity to care for one another. And when they understand that they're doing this to protect their friends, I think that we'll see them step up as they have for the past 18 months. We have lots of rules in our life. We have to wear seatbelts. Someone mentioned car accidents. Well, actually, lots of action was taken based on the number of car accidents. We have lower speed limits. We have seatbelts. We have airbags.
Diane,
So
I'm going to jump in, just ask you that, if you could, give us your final thoughts. Thank you.
no problem. I'm asking that we remember the diversity of students and their situations in our schools, and that we make sure that we keep everyone safe. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
The person who had their hand up put it down, so I want to say the name David Shannon, if they want the opportunity to speak.
David Shannon, if you would like to speak, now's the opportunity. No.
Next would be Kerry Donahue.
Kerry Donahue.
Hi.
Hi, Kerry.
As the parent of an unvaccinated 11-year-old with asthma who's entering Marshall Simon this year, I want to thank Dr. Conte and the school committee for looking out for all kids, including kids like mine. 18 months into this pandemic, we all know that my child's mask protects your child. And for my child to be protected, then your child needs to be masked. That's simply how it works. This can't be a situation where parents can choose to just mask their own child. It doesn't work that way. My son has been wearing masks all camp summer, all summer. He's completely comfortable in them. He has no problem wearing them. I absolutely sympathize with those whose children do. I encourage you to try different kinds. There are lots of ones that are made for kids with sensory issues. We're reopening in a far worse position than we were last year. With Delta surging, kids catching it at much higher levels and far more susceptible to the worst effects of it, which we're seeing in places with ICUs with no pediatric beds and no remote option. Asking our kids to simply continue wearing masks as they did last year is literally the very least we can do to protect all kids, but especially our most vulnerable kids like mine. It is just not too much to ask, and I'm extremely grateful that this is the direction we're going. Thank you again, Dr. Conti, and thank you to the school committee.
Thank you, Carrie, for your comment. Bob?
Next is Kristen A.
Kristen?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for your time. I just wanted to speak on letting it be parents' choice for the mask mandate. I have a child that's going into the first grade in Burlington, and the teachers did awesome last year, you know, making it as normal as possible. But I really think it's time to get these kids back to normal. 0 children in Massachusetts have died from COVID. We're being told that hospitalizations are up, but what we're not being told is how many kids are hospitalized. Mass DPH conveniently stopped reporting on this in June. How many are hospitalized strictly with COVID versus being hospitalized with another diagnosis and just happened to be COVID positive? How many patients hospitalized strictly for COVID were previously vaccinated? At this point, all eligible persons have had ample opportunity to be vaccinated. The immunocompromised and other high-risk people have to take the same precautions prior to COVID that they always had to protect themselves. Burlington is not a high-risk community. And remember, positive cases don't always equal symptoms, don't always equal hospitalization, don't always equal death. COVID is here to stay. Masks aren't going to change that. It's time to get our kids back to normal, and they've been through enough. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Kristen. Bob?
Kristen A., do you mind if we ask for your last name?
Sure. It's a Bascarone.
Thank you.
We just need it for a minute.
Next on the list is Jen, who also does not publish a last name.
Jen, you're next.
Hi, it's Jen Goldsmith.
Thank you.
I have to read this because otherwise I don't want to go off track. My name is Jennifer Goldsmith. I'm a resident.
I think you may be muted, Jen.
Worry about. This does not downplay what COVID is. Being a veteran, I know how imperative mental health is on the forefront, especially in today's times. This is also to be said for our children and how they are processing and dealing with all of these changes. We are ignoring social, emotional, and physical health. My daughter is a military child. She has been through multiple deployments of both of her parents being gone, moves, and adjustments. COVID, by far, has trumped any of these hardships for my kid. My kid does not complain, rolls with the punches, and anything else in life. She did her part last year. She wore the mask, distance where needed, and so on. Especially after last year, at the end of the year, when the masks were not mandated outside of school, but were in school, it caused an even more of a hardship for her. There's just absolutely no reason. Breaks were not given like they said they would be. Masks are not used properly. They're reused. They're isolating and suffocating, both literally and figuratively. My child's social and emotional health is just as important as her physical health. Masks and vaccination should not be the decision of anyone other than the parents. There is no judgment either way, as it is a personal decision. I cannot stand by and be silent and watch my child suffer silently. That is all. I just wanted to say my part.
Thank you, Jen, for your comments.
Next is Tamara Maniscalco.
Tamara.
Hi, thank you.
Tamara,
Camera's not working today, but you can hear me, right?
Excuse me, Tamara, before you start, I just have a question for Bob. Bob, how many people on the list, can you tell?
She right now currently is the last person with the hand raised.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Tamara, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, no, I just wanted to say I really appreciate you guys. I wish my camera was working, but it's not. I appreciate you guys following the science and trying to protect the people who are most at risk. who are unable to be vaccinated or too young, because they could face serious consequences. The adults or some of the elderly people, or relatives of people who are teachers or children in schools. And I just appreciate that you're trying to protect the community and keep people safe. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for your comments. And is that the last requested speaker, Bob? No hands, okay. I want to thank everybody who spoke, and I want to thank everybody who's listening who didn't speak, because it's obviously an important issue. With that, I'm going to give the committee a chance to be heard and give their thoughts on where we go from here.
Do you want a motion first?
If there is a motion, somebody can put it on the table.
What is the motion?
Is it to adopt the MASC policy?
Yes.
Updated MASC mask
Yep.
policy? So moved.
Moved by Carl and seconded by
Second.
by Christine to adopt the updated face covering policy. I think we can vote the policy and then speak about how we're going to, however, if you want to wait and vote the policy at the end, that's fine too.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's on the table. Moved and seconded to approve the updated face coverings policy. Anybody have any comments or questions?
I guess I'll start. I'm going to support this policy, and in my mind, we are trying to mitigate the risk to students by using a number of measures. Last year it was ventilation plus masks plus distancing. We're taking away the distancing this year. If we continue to use masks, it just helps to protect the students as best that we can. I appreciate that we're being flexible by revisiting it monthly, as Dr. Conti mentioned earlier. I think that is prudent. And so I'm going to be in support of this.
Thank you, Carl. Anybody else? Martha?
I want to thank people who sent emails, who spoke tonight. It's obviously something that is very difficult for many families, for many individual students. I am going to support this mask mandate. I think it's important to help protect our children and to keep the schools open. The pandemic isn't over, and we all would like it to be, but it isn't over. And just because it's been 18 months doesn't mean we can let our guard down. And I believe that this will be a mitigating factor as well. Some of the concerns that parents raised, I think that those are issues that we need to address in the schools, that the teachers and the principals, I'm sure that Dr. Conti and all of the staff will look into. If mask breaks aren't happening, we need to, let the kids, tell the kids to let their teachers know or whatever, but we can address some of those concerns. We do need to make this as comfortable as we can, but I also know that we had schools full of students last year where students wore their masks and it wasn't an issue. If that's not the way your child is, then make sure that the principal knows and make sure that you look into various ways that maybe we can help your child become more comfortable. There are, in the policy, which people online didn't get to read specifically, there are specific exceptions and situations that are relevant. We also have hired a new director of transition, Ms. Dressler, who is in charge of making sure that students who were remote last year will be brought in and made as comfortable as possible. It's totally understandable that a student who was remote all of last year would be anxious, and we want to make sure that we, or some other feeling, but we want to make sure that all those kids are going to be comfortable and integrated well into the schools. I believe our director of transition is also tasked with addressing social emotional issues for all of our students, whether they were remote last year or not. And I do support this policy, so those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Chris?
I also support the policy.
I think after listening to the parents, and I appreciate all the input, I think there are some situations, as Martha alluded to, where there may be a medical reason why a child either cannot wear a mask or would wear an alternative kind of a mask. And I think that, you know, any parent who has a concern about that with a valid reason should look into it. To repeat what others have said, I appreciate that this will be reevaluated each month because frankly, I hate masks. I don't like wearing them. I don't like washing them. I don't like the way they smell. I don't like anything about masks, but we have to wear them because we have to protect each other from COVID. And masks may be very difficult for kids and maybe more so for some kids, but closing schools is worse. And it's worse for those kids that are bothered by them. The kids need to be in school. We need to protect those vulnerable children who cannot get vaccinated yet. And I would remind everybody that your children's masks, if they're cloth masks, they need to wear clean ones every day, or they need clean paper ones every day, because people who did speak tonight brought up the issue of dirt and germs and masks, and that's a real issue. You know, we do need to be careful about it. It's a nuisance, but we need to deal with it. So because I feel so strongly that every child needs to be protected, I support the policy because the loss of even one child would be unacceptable. One too many. And I'm sorry about people who are upset with this policy, that are disappointed with it, but I think, at least personally speaking, I have to vote for what I think is right, and that's what I believe is right.
Thank you. Catherine?
Yeah, I also support the policy, and do want to mention that, I do like the fact that we will be reevaluating it on a monthly basis based on what's going on in our community. I don't want to repeat what everyone else was saying. I am definitely sensitive to the folks who, express a concern for their children. And I think that if you have a child who is in that situation, that, the principal and teachers will listen and find a way to make it work best for your child in this situation, if you really feel the mask is an issue. But I do feel like we need to support it to protect the most vulnerable. At this time, we just don't know, who your children or people, will be around that may have been affected by the coronavirus, and you just might infect someone who is susceptible and doesn't know it. So again, I support it as well. And again, I like the fact that we'll be reevaluating every month based on what's going on in the community. So that's it.
Thank you. Dr. Conte, a question. When we say we're going to be reevaluating it every month, are there specific conditions that we're looking for that would trigger rescinding the order or adjusting the order, or what are the benchmarks that are going to guide us as we review this?
They're not set yet, but we're being told that they may be forthcoming. So it may have to do something with vaccination rate, but as one of the parents said, that it may also be the availability of the vaccine. If the CDC does a full approval as opposed to just a preliminary approval and it becomes available. Mr. Chair, we also have schools in southern states that have been open for 3 or 4 weeks, and we have models where schools have been masked and models where they haven't been masked, and I think those scenarios will be studied. And in the conversations with my colleagues, because we've been talking regularly without any state direction, we're having to make these decisions district by district. So it may be even that a district next door makes a different decision than we do, and it's not that they care any less, it's just a different decision. But what we all have said, and it was a meeting this afternoon, which we sort of a conclusion we all reached, is we believe in the next month or two, probably 2, we're either all going to have to move to masking everybody, or we're all going to move to making it optional because we'll have data in terms of spread and everything else. Everyone wants kids in school 5 days a week. That's sort of everyone's goal. And we're just trying to use every tool that's available to us to make that work. Some of the tools have been taken off the table, which again, remote learning as an option was taken off by the state. So, so Mr. Murphy, that's what I think. And so the reason I think we need to revisit it is I think everything's changing rapidly, and I think we'll know what's best. It would be really hard for us to implement a masking policy 4 weeks later as opposed to taking it away. So I do think we're starting conservatively. I just think it would be easier to relax the mandate than to implement it after the fact. So.
No, I appreciate that, and I think it's, as my colleagues have noted, I think it's good that we are going to be reviewing this on a regular basis, and but I think it's also important as CDC and others issue guidelines and benchmarks that we make those aware, because I think the frustration is with some people is, okay, we have to get to here and then we don't have to do it anymore, and then you get to there, but no, now we got to get to there, and this is not an exact science by any stretch of the imagination, but I think as the medical information becomes more prevalent, I think it's important that we do try to set some benchmarks that we can work towards. I think it makes it a little bit easier if you know that once we get to this level, we're in good shape. And so I'd like to maybe discuss a little bit as we review this at future meetings, any further direction, benchmarks, information that have come out of the CDC that might assist us in knowing where we have to get in order to maybe change the policy a little bit.
Yeah, I agree, because is it going to be a certain percent of the teachers and students who are vaccinated that's going to allow us to, and we should come up with some sort of specific benchmark. And again, I think it's based on statistics we get as well. But
I think, the unfortunate thing is this Delta variant surge is happening in mid-August. It didn't happen in mid-June, where we would have had time to adjust to it and maybe even get past the surge. But obviously, that's not something that we have any control of. And personally, I will also support the proposal. Like everybody else, I mean, nobody's thrilled about doing it, but I think what we saw tonight was a small snapshot of the opinions that kind of go throughout town, and we've all received an awful lot of feedback from people over the last few weeks. One thing you learn in this job is that no matter what you do, somebody's not going to be happy with you. So that's all part of that goes with the territory. But the way that I look at this, I'd rather have somebody be angry at me for having their child wear a mask than having somebody be angry at me for not taking the proper precautions and their child gets sick. So I think this is one of those situations where you have to be cautious. That's just, I think it's the only choice at this stage of the game. But I do want to assure people that we will be reviewing this going forward on a regular basis. And my hope is that once the surge maybe gets behind us a little bit, as we've seen happen over the course of this virus for the last year and a half, it peaks and then it valleys, and I think it's important that once we get by this hump, or we get to a certain percentage of vaccinated people that we all feel is appropriate or whatever, that this policy will be reviewed and maybe rescinded. This is not something that we're voting today and now we'll see you next April and we'll talk about it then. This is something we want to keep an eye on, and I want to assure people that we will do that. So having said that, any other comments or questions, Carl?
Just a quick logistical question, and maybe Bob has the answer. Does the district still have a stockpile of masks from our purchases last year, that in case a kid shows up without one, we can just say, here you go?
Sorry, I should answer verbally. Mr. Foss, yes, we have masks, and the masks will be available at every school.
Mr. Murphy, I'd like to ask a question. Ms. Fazio on Facebook had asked the question, what are the consequences and/or plan for children that will not wear the mask to school. And I think that's something that you're probably working out the protocols for, but it is something I want to be sure that the schools are communicating with the parents and working to make sure they know how to be working with students if there's a problem. Is that what you'll be doing, Dr. Conti?
Ms. Simon, I think the school committee needs to vote the policy first, and then what the intention would be to communicate clearly. Remember, if you're sending your child to school on a school bus, they have to be in a mask on the school bus.
Right.
If you're going to send your child to school without a mask, we will provide the child with a mask when they enter the school. And if they, again, without a mask, they won't be allowed to enter the school. So that'll be the implementation of this policy. Without a mask, they won't have entrance, but we will give every child who needs a mask, make the mask available. Our students were very compliant last year. They wore their masks. I think they understood the health of the greater community, and I think that our students will comply again this year, and I hope it will be temporary. And I hope the mitigation factors that we put in place with the vaccine becoming more readily available, as we learn more about sort of how to manage this better. And I think as we study districts that have both left masks up to individual discretion versus those who've had these in place, and we can study sort of the trends. Again, the goal here isn't just a mask. The goal here is to keep kids in school in person. So I think that's what I'm going to be looking at. The important measures is, does it look like masking has a positive effect on keeping kids in school, keeping students out of quarantine? And I think that's one of the things that we're going to be careful to look at. And Mr. Murphy, to your point, will be one of the metrics that we take back to the committee moving forward. So, Ms. Simon, I just want to be clear again that we'll be communicating if the school committee votes, takes a vote, approves the policy, which again, I can count, looks like that is going to happen. Then the result of that policy will be students will be required to have masks to enter the building for school.
And if I could just review my comment earlier, that the policy does allow for students who have a medical, behavioral, or other challenge making it unsafe to wear a face mask or face covering, will be able to address this. A written note from a physician is required for the requested exemption, and parents may not excuse their child from the face mask requirement by signing a waiver. So I think it's pretty straightforward, and there are accommodations for students who have physical or medical needs.
Okay, if there's nothing further, I'm going to put the motion to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? And that passes 5-0-0, and the face covering upgraded policy is adopted. All right, moving along. Next item, item C, requiring vaccine for all employees. Dr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do not have a policy ready for the school committee this evening, but I did want to get this topic of discussion out publicly and to sort of get some feedback from the committee. There are districts that are requiring that all employees be vaccinated as a condition, as a requirement of employment. There are some conversations that need to take place, especially with our unionized workers. If the committee were to eventually take that position, and with the committee's permission, I'd like to start some of those conversations. Again, depending on the committee's thoughts. There are also exceptions, as Ms. Simon will reemphasize, for employees with medical conditions or potentially religious reasons why they couldn't take the vaccine. And what districts are doing in those cases are typically requiring those employees to test weekly. Part of the delay in bringing this to the school committee is the tests that are available are changing, and there are rapid tests that are more readily available, and guidance around using rapid tests are again, just being rolled out. So we actually had participated in a presentation today. So, so I think the tools, again, that are available to us are changing, but I just wanted to briefly get the school committee's thoughts on, again, requiring employees, these are the adults in the building, nothing to do with students, but the adults in the buildings, to be vaccinated as a requirement of employment. And I think the vast majority are. We would need to collect that information. I know that would be a valid question. My first question is, how many are, how many aren't? We don't know that yet. We would need to, again, ask as a part of the policy. And then we would need to give people time, if they weren't vaccinated, obviously, to get vaccinated. I think hosting clinics at the school will certainly help with that. And then we would need to provide testing for any employee with a valid reason why they wouldn't be vaccinated. I'm supportive of that type of policy, just in case you were wondering. But I was wondering, again, where the school committee, sort of some thoughts of the school committee, and then there are lots of conversations that need to happen with all of our employees prior to this, coming forward with the school committee with sort of a policy language that you would all be ready to vote on. Time frame would probably be, I hope, first or second meeting in September when we would be able to bring that forward. We did check with Labor Council, and it is within the school committee's purview to make this a requirement of employment. Again, there are conversations that are required for us to have this process move forward.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Dr. Conti on the proposed vaccine requirement? Anybody? Chris?
I fully support a mandate that it be a requirement for employment that all staff be vaccinated with exemptions, medical exemptions, and I guess religious exemptions, but I would be very strict about documentation. I don't think we should go along with just verbal, we need doctor's notes, and we need serious documentation. I also, in the policy, would like to see the language that says anyone who's not vaccinated could be tested at least once a week, because I think if we get into a problem where someone in the classroom has COVID, or we get a lot of cases, I don't think that we should be limited to a once a week if it becomes necessary to test more than once a week. I wouldn't expect that to happen, or at least not to happen, except once in a blue moon, but I would like it to be part of the policy.
It's a silly question, but where's the funding come from for the testing?
Actually, it's through the chair. It's a great question, and the state has committed to providing testing resources at no cost. So for the tests themselves, we may have some. We haven't worked out all the details about where the testing would take place, who would do the testing. That would be part of the plan. I don't think we should pass a requirement like this without having all the details sort of thought out. But if you said as a committee, no way, then it's going to take us a lot of time to get this done. Our largest labor group obviously is teachers, and I will say the MTA, which is the parent organization of our educators union, came out today in support of a vaccine mandate, obviously with the conditions that go along with having conversations with the local unions about those requirements. So those are some of the conversations. So again, I think both national unions have come out in support of vaccine mandates, and so again, I think that we would have a lot of willing partners in these conversations, and I think I just would want to again point of tonight is just to get a feel from the committee and then come back to the committee with those type of details. But Ms. Bond, the state said they would pay for the tests.
Anybody else, Carl?
Well, Dr. Conti, is that what the test and stay, is that what the program is called from the state?
The test and stay is part of that program, yes. The test and stay, I believe, is more focused on students in terms of close contacting. If a teacher or educator is vaccinated, they would not be considered a close contact, again, in a classroom, especially, again, if they were masked. So I think your policy that you passed will help with that. We will get into the whole, we did sign up as a district to participate in the test and stay program, Mr. Foss, and I think as we learn more about it, we're going to need to communicate that to parents and also to the committee. So, and again, just very briefly, that allows a student who's identified as a close contact to rapid test, I think 5 or 7 days in a row, and with a negative rapid test, remain in school. So again, there's a lot of details that we're working out, but I think everyone's trying to provide a pathway for students to stay in school. I think having all the adults vaccinated, again, is another mitigating tool that we can use to try to keep kids in school.
Martha, anything?
I do support this direction, and I'm glad that you're looking at all the different aspects of it, including for people who would have a medical issue, getting testing and looking into all of that. So I do support that. Thank you.
Thank you. I as well, I'd strongly support that. I think to me, it's a no-brainer. And I think it would also help, getting back to the mask policy, one of the benchmarks seems to be percentage of people vaccinated. And in Massachusetts, if you believe what you read, it's somewhere between 60 and 70%. If we can get that close to 100% of the adults in the school buildings, I think that would certainly help as far as that stuff goes. So I would strongly support it as well. So if the administration wants to bring forward a proposed policy, whether it's the first or second meeting in September, I think we as a committee would be happy to review it at that point.
One question.
Sure.
Or a clarification. Dr. Conti, you said you're going to come back to us in the first or second meeting of September. Is that right? The only hang-up I had was for a mandate, is that it should get fully approved by the FDA. And to my understanding, that's going to happen at the beginning of September or at the end of August. So I think that my hang-up would be moot, because if you're not coming back to us until after, theoretically, it's fully approved by the FDA, then it should be no problem. Thanks.
I think, Mr. Foss, that's the timing I have in my head. If there's a delay in the FDA, then we can certainly revisit that. There's a lot of work to do before we come back anyway, but I just wanted to get the sort of the feelings of the committee before moving forward. I do have to, again, the bulk of the dialogue has to happen now with our employees, so I think that's what's next.
All right, so that's, I think you have a sense from the committee on that one that would certainly support it if all the chips fall into place.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is elementary enrollment.
Yeah, we're going to get back to some school stuff now for the opening. I think I went over some of the numbers at our last meeting. Just to explain to the committee how quickly things are changing, and this data is even older now, and I'll probably have Ms. Meliano texting me as I present, correcting me, but I think last week we had 17 new elementary registrations since our meeting on July 13th. So, so we're seeing growth. We saw, again, Fox Hill Grade 2, where there were 4 sections. We had some concerns. We did discuss Grade 1 again at Fox Hill last meeting, where we were going to take a teaching position from Pine Glen and go from 3 sections to 2 in first grade and go from 4 sections to 5 at Grade 1 at Fox Hill. Grade 1 had about 85 students registered. Grade 3 at Fox Hill is also a 5-section, 5 homeroom grade, That had 85 students in it as well. And we had grade 2 increased to 83 between last meeting and this meeting. And we still have some time before the start of the school year. So what I'd like the school committee to do is to approve the addition of a grade 2 elementary teacher by, because of enrollment growth there. I did speak to Mr. Rosenblatt. He can move some things around. He can move some specialist classes onto carts, which we don't like to do, but he can, I think, squeeze out one more classroom for this 5th section at 2nd grade. Unlike the 1st grade position, though, this is a new FTE. This is an additional position to the staff. So there's obviously a budgetary impact. It's not in our operating budget, but I'd like to move forward anyway. It's early in the year, and we can see as this plays out later on, and if it becomes a problem, I think there are tools for us to address it at that time. But I think in keeping with the class sizes that we have, which is a priority for this committee, strongly recommending that we add a 2nd grade teaching position at Fox Hill for the 21-22 school year, fiscal 22.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. In the past, on occasion when this has happened, and it's certainly not the first time it's happened, sometimes we've gone to September town meeting for funding. Other times, and it sounds like perhaps this is what you have in mind now, is we kind of wait to see how the year plays out. If that's the preferred way of dealing with it financially at this stage of the game, I think it's important that, at least that we put Ways and Means on notice, and ultimately town meeting, that, you know, if we're not asking for the position to be put in our budget in September, we're certainly reserving the right to come forward in either January or at next May's town meeting to backfill that position. If, you know, if the teacher negotiations resolve in such a way that we have a couple extra dollars in the budget and we can cover this, then that's great. But this is clearly something that we need to do, and I just want to make sure that there's no issues with funding it when and if the time comes. So, like I said, if we're not gonna do it in September, I'm okay with that. But, you know, I think we just have to communicate to Ways and Means that there's an enrollment-driven hire, and that we're going to at some point have to come forward with funding potentially, just so they're not surprised in you know, next May when we're looking for the money.
Is the warrant open or closed?
What's that?
Is the warrant open or closed for September?
I think it's already closed, I believe. Is that,
I think
I think have we passed the deadline on that, Bob? I thought it was towards the end of July, actually.
Yes.
A voice from the sky said
It was
yes.
the 13th.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Nicole.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to authorize the addition of a 2nd grade classroom at Fox Hill School, and authorizing the school department to hire a new teacher for that position. Are there any further comments or questions on the motion? Seeing none, I'll put that to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes 5-0-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I assume Roger's still on there listening, so at least he knows about it.
I also, excuse me, Mr. Riggs, I apologize. I also shared with you the high school and the middle school enrollment. Again, those shift fairly regularly. We do have a smaller 10th grade class. For those of you who attended graduation, our typical graduations have been around, 250 students. So we are down a little bit. 10th grade is a smaller class, but you can see the classes that follow behind in 6, 7, and 8 are larger. So again, we're going to be seeing that as we move forward. So I just wanted to share the enrollment that we currently have in front of us.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
If I may, thank you, Dr. Conti. I did ask you to share enrollment numbers for the middle school and the high school with us as well. And there's some questions of people on Facebook about some of the enrollment numbers. Is this information available somehow on the website, or is there a way we could share this information so that other people can have access to it?
Sure. It's not secret information.
Yep.
We can certainly post the enrollments. I usually get a monthly report, and maybe we can just post it every month. The same report that I get, it's by grade, by school.
Okay, and where on the website might that be looked for?
We have a brand new website, so
Okay.
I will make sure there's a section that
Great.
has enrollment,
Enrollments, great.
a big old button that people
Thank
can
you.
find it.
So hopefully in the next month or so, that'll get up, and then people can get some of those questions answered. Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Seeing nothing. Next item is school building facilities update.
I'm going to take a break and turn it over to Mr. Cuna for a minute.
Thank you. Through the chair, I think most of you all know that I like to praise the summer staff that is here. That includes custodians, clerical staff, admin staff, and any summer crew workers that we are gracious enough to have work with us during the summertime. That being said, we are on the less than 2-week crunch time. They're feeling it, I'm feeling it. I'm sure the parents at home are feeling it, with school starting on August 30th. We also have teachers in next week as well, too, so that makes the buildings look a bit tighter. So year after year, I think our staff does a great job of keeping the buildings maintained and looking great. And I have no doubt that we'll do it again this year, and the buildings will be great upon the entrance, for our students. That being said, some of the projects that have been going on, besides cleaning floors and whatnot, we are continuing to focus on COVID protocols from last year. So that means our maintenance staff and custodial staff is going through all of our HVAC systems. We also have contracts as well with our HVAC systems. So we are replacing filters on them. We are doing maintenance and tune-ups on them. We are taking airflow measurements on them. We have air purifiers that were purchased last year, and we are going through those and looking at any filters that need to be cleaned or replaced and whatnot. We are also going to continue our CO2 testing and air quality testing throughout the year. So we are working with some local resident consultants as well too, where we have weekly meetings to review this data. So we do want to make sure that people understand, and we will get this message out as well, that it wasn't one and done, it wasn't last year, forget about it. We are taking air quality seriously, and that will be a focus this year moving forward. Again, I can answer a million questions. I know this is a long meeting. I don't know if you want me to go into more details with other projects, but like I said, I do definitely want to make sure to thank our summertime staff.
Thanks, Bob. Does anybody have any specific questions on any facilities related? We're talking about the Fox Hill project next, so aside from the Fox Hill project, any questions for Bob? Yeah.
First of all, we'll get to it later about the different projects. I'm glad to see there's a whole lot of projects that have gotten accomplished, and thank you also to the people who were working all summer. And I'm still waiting to hear what the report is on the BHS HVAC system that we have some people who've been working on it for several months, and I'm just wondering what the status of that report is, please.
It is still ongoing. I don't have a full report. There were some delays and some other revisits to this building from the consulting companies that we're using. I did reach out and ask for a status of that. So they are working on the report now. They have collected enough data to actually issue a report, but they have to finish the report on their end. I was hoping to have something tonight. I don't.
Okay.
So I will hope to have something for, if not the next meeting, but definitely at a next meeting soon. I am putting pressure on that, and it's something that I did promise the committee, so I will make sure it gets accomplished.
Yeah, I just have a concern that, it gets closer to winter, another year where the boilers could go, and we need to start moving on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob. Fox Hill project update.
Again, thank you to the chair. In regards to the Fox Hill project, I wish I had something extremely exciting to tell you, like we are breaking ground. We're not there yet. We do have a deadline for the educational profile and the online enrollment projection profile. That is due August 30th. I'm almost complete with those. I do have a few members that are double checking some data and providing some more information for me. So we're focused on meeting that deadline. After that, we do have a small window, about 60 days before the next requirement is done for our deadline. But please remember that February of 2022 is one of our big deadlines, where actually the committee would vote as to whether or not we meet the requirements to move forward into the next step. So again, I know a topic that should be discussed at some point is the school building committee. We have appointed members. We have not had any meetings yet. I don't want to even imply that there's nothing necessarily directly for the committee to do right now. But again, it's really a lot of internal work that we need to complete first. And there will definitely be plenty of needs for meetings for a school building committee moving forward.
Again, just, Mr. Chair, I think at one of our conversations, my plan was to have a building committee meet before the end of the summer, and honestly, that just, it's not going to happen. So the opening of school drastically changed in the last 2 to 3 weeks, so we'll have a kickoff meeting probably sometime in September once we have school open, and
Sure.
We'll make sure that we are up to date on everything that we have to submit, but would just like the committee to form, and then we can talk about communication and other stuff moving forward. So I understand I mentioned during the summer, it's just realistically that's not going to happen.
I mean, as a practical matter, there's not a lot for the committee to do at this stage other than to get acquainted. So as we get closer to the February date, and we'll be doing some more substantive discussions.
Yeah, and again, we just had a conversation about enrollment, and just to notice on your enrollment data sheets with, again, I will post for everyone to see, Fox Hill is much more, has much more in common with Francis Wyman in terms of enrollment than Memorial School. We often pair up Fox Hill and Memorial, but a more appropriate pairing is really Fox Hill and Francis Wyman. So when you look at staffing, when you ask me about sort of programming, we're really need to look at those two schools in terms of needs and staffing. So I just think we often pair Memorial and Fox Hill together as our sort of two middle schools, with Francis Wyman, our larger school, and Pine Glen, our smaller school. But it really is changing, where we're having Fox Hill and Francis Wyman pretty similar in size at this point.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's my understanding that you will be the chair of the school building committee for Fox Hill. Is that accurate?
Me?
Yeah.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. And I also just want to encourage us to have a meeting. It may seem like there's nothing to be done until February, but I do think it's important for the school building committee to meet, and there are people who know a lot more about it than I do, but there are things to discuss and goals to set and things like that. So I would encourage us to try to have, this is not to say that it should have taken priority over other things in August, because I know there's so much going on. But I don't want it to get lost and all of a sudden it's December and we haven't had a school building committee meeting. So I would encourage us to really try to have a first meeting in September, okay?
No, and we'll certainly do that. I also.
Thank you.
I also have, I don't want to waste the committee members' time either by just having a meeting to have a meeting. So I think once we get past the start of school, we can start focusing on the things that we have to talk about and get a timeline together, and then we can have a good meeting and actually get something accomplished. Communication, item 8. 8A, Burlington High School Student Handbook. This is the first reading of the proposed 2021-2022 high school handbook.
Again, Mr. Sullivan provided the handbook, and he's updated some dates. Upon looking through it, I got some feedback from Ms. Simon, and that there were some other corrections that needed to be needed to be made. Those were communicated directly to Mr. Sullivan. So again, as this is a first reading, we just wanted to give it to everyone. If you have other things that you'd like to see changed, please get those to me before our next meeting. And we'll certainly, in your packet for the next meeting, identify the changes that that we've made from this reading that's been presented. Mr. Sullivan did want me to mention that school will obviously start prior to the final approval, but the existing handbook is in place and he can operate using the existing student handbook and wait for the second reading and approval. I think it's, Sharon, when's our next meeting? I always have to ask you, September, is it the 9th? So we can.
Okay, so if anybody sees anything that needs to be corrected or has changes, just let the superintendent know. And per our policy, we'll vote that at the second reading, which will be our next meeting. Item 8B, out-of-state student travel, the Burlington High School Marching Band to Hampton, New Hampshire. Dr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Burlington High School Marching Band is requesting approval for an out-of-state field trip to Hampton Beach, New Hampshire. This trip is scheduled for August 25th, 2021. The bus will leave the high school at 8 a.m. and return at 4 p.m. Students are required to wear face masks on the bus. There are approximately 50 students going on this trip. Students will provide their own lunch.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on this item?
I just want to say that the band program and the band trip is fabulous, and yes, I'm totally in favor of this.
Yeah, this is an annual event that they've been doing for years, and they've always had a lot of fun, and there's never been any problems. So,
yeah.
Chris?
I just want to say that my grandson would be very upset if I didn't vote to approve this.
We don't want that to happen. So, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the approval of the out-of-state travel, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that passes 5-0-0.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to give you a break from my droning and bring Mr. Larkin in to talk about the summer school program that we just concluded. And just before he does that, and Bob mentioned the summer custodial cruise, I just want to tell the committee that every classroom at Memorial was full, and the custodians had to work around. Basically, there were more students at Memorial this summer than there were during the school year. So I'm sure, Bob, the last few weeks since summer school ended, they've been really scrambling at Memorial. So they deserve a special shout out because they had a full building this summer.
They do. I mean, I don't really publicly like to give that shout out to one particular person, but he does deserve it, and his whole staff over there does deserve it as well, because they're putting in extra efforts to make sure that building is ready.
So, Mr. Mason, thank you. So with that, Patrick, again, we had a lot to be grateful for the summer program, and lots of people to thank. So, and you're one of them, so thank you for your work with that. But I know you want to make sure to highlight some other folks and some aspects of the program. So through the chair, go ahead, Patrick.
Thank you. I know the people I'm going to mention did far more than I did, so I want to start with Michelle Burnham, who is our summer school administrator for the elementary school at Memorial, and as Dr. Conti stated, we had more students there for summer school than we did during the school year. So to her and the staff, kudos. Josh McGregor and Jessica Green handled the special ed component there. Jennifer Knight in my office was great with coordinating for all of the summer programs, and also Jennifer did a lot of connecting with the food pantry and helping us coordinate lunches, which leads me to Chris Stevens in the Memorial Cafeteria and her staff and a number of volunteers along the way, including folks from the food pantry, Dr. Conti, our Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Mr. Porch were there making lunches one day. So it really was a full team effort to make sure students had what they needed during the summer school. And I'd be remiss for elementary if I didn't mention my secretary, Rosemary D'Souza, who spent time over there pretty much every day and took more applications in a short period of time. The window was a lot shorter for us getting the applications this year, just given the nature of what was happening. And kudos to Rosemary for supporting Michelle and the staff over there. At the high school, I want to shout out to Jill Graham and Amy Dowdy and Carolyn Crowley at the middle school, who ran the middle school summer program. And then a number of our nurses also spent time supporting the summer program. So thanks to Barbara Conley, who worked a week at Memorial, and for all of our nurses who, again, after such, and the staff in general, for people to do the summer program after such a trying year. Again, it was really a success story, and we were happy to have the students be there with us and take up a part of their summer. So also, before I forget, I want to also thank Donna Sullivan. There was a lot of coordination with kids from the summer program at elementary heading over to the Memorial School. And again, I know I'm forgetting somebody, so I apologize in advance, but Bob was over there to help with traffic flow on the first day. And again, it was a great team effort, and the number of kids that we were able to service in a short period of time was really, again, kudos to the district and the people involved. I had very little to do with it. And thank you, Deb Clark, because I want to say publicly, I always forget the program that's attached, and I can see it out of my office. The BECC summer program, Deborah Clark and her folks down there ran the summer program all summer long, and was phenomenal. So thank you. Thanks, Deb, for the text, and I'm sorry you had to send it to me.
Just for some, again, concrete numbers, people did an excellent job. They pulled it together really quickly. Our typical elementary summer program in sort of without a COVID year would be around 200 students. I think, Patrick, you told me we had about 380 students at Memorial, so almost twice the size. We were providing transportation this summer, which we normally didn't provide, and we were also serving lunches, Patrick, right, that we normally didn't provide either. So almost double the size of our elementary summer program. So there was high interest, and we made some changes. You all know that we typically don't run a middle or high school program, but we used some of the federal dollars that were available to us. We put together, I think, effective programs very quickly, and then we served the needs of both our middle and high school students. So again, if these were programs that were just, we did every single year and were sort of part of our muscle memory, it would be one thing, but we created these programs and ran them very, very quickly. And again, we have always had. I want to
thank Nicole. Sorry, Dr. Hardy, for interrupting. I want to thank Nicole Kasha. Again, you mentioned the federal dollars, and she was able to help us navigate, the funding to make sure that we were able to do everything that we did. So thanks to Nicole.
Again, my final thing was also to say, what is part of our muscle memory is an outstanding preschool program. So I just want to make sure that I don't forget that, and we saved the best for last, Deb Clark, and mentioned that the preschool program, Wednesday Water Day is one of my highlights. So so I'm not sure if the committee has any specific questions, but a lot of people put in a tremendous amount of effort to really, I think, serve many more students than they normally would during the summertime.
That's great.
Great
Thank you very
job.
much. Patrick, thank you. Next item, item D, budget transfer, accrued liability reserve fund approval. Is that Nicole? Or?
It is. Thank you, Mr. Chair, but I'm going to turn it over to Nicole. Hi, Nicole.
Hello. Can everyone hear?
Yep.
Okay. So before we get into the next two agenda items, there's just a few things that I wanted to touch on regarding finance and the close of our year. Should both of the next two votes be approved by the committee, we will be turning back a little over $1 million from the school operating budget this year. Just as everything else COVID related has been ever changing, the school finance side of things has certainly not been an exception to that. In working with the town at the close of the year, we wanted to make sure that we were able to maximize our relief funds that needed to be obligated first before any local funds, in addition to ensuring that we maximized our relief funding. There were also changes to reimbursement rates for FEMA, which is a Federal Emergency Management Assistance. So those eligible expenses, and those changes weren't pushed out on the local level until the last 2 months of our fiscal year. So there was just a lot of moving parts, which is why we're going to be turning back just a little over 1 million. Originally, we had anticipated funding our school lunch deficit with CARES funds, but the level of detail that was required to claim these expenses was very labor intensive. So instead, we were able to identify some alternative costs, such as custodial overtime for the increased cleaning, to offset what we're going to be funding from operating, which is why you'll see that the school lunch deficit is the vote is being requested to be funded from operating instead. So we sort of we swapped those two. And the first vote before the committee is for the $750,000 to fund the accrued liability reserve fund that was established at town meeting in this past May. Again, this is to fund contractual earned leave upon retirement or separation of service. The current liability is about 1.4 million. And I just wanted to make note that we had been working with our labor council to enforce changes to the current practices to ensure that this liability doesn't continue to grow at a rate that we're unable to sustain within our budget. So if anyone has any questions on any of the next item.
Thanks, Nicole. Questions on this particular item, the $700,000 accrued liability reserve? Martha?
So Nicole, because of the unusual situation this year, we're able to transfer the $750,000, which is about half of the current liability. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, and if, it's not like we would expect to have that much to contribute to it in the future, but at some point, if we did reach our liability, is it the kind of thing where we wouldn't necessarily need to put money into it in a given year? Is that accurate?
No.
Through the chair. So I say it's 1.4 million, but some of these people aren't anticipated. Some of them might not retire for another 25 years. So the actual liability might not be realized until further down the road.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Nicole, the liability grow as we hire new people and things change, contracts change, et cetera?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Does the liability grow as new people come into the system?
We've been trying to put some changes in our contracts in place to make sure that doesn't happen going forward.
Thank you.
All right, seeing nothing further question-wise for Nicole, Chair will entertain a motion to approve the funding of the accrued liability reserve fund in the amount of $750,000.
So moved.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bob?
What?
Yes.
Through the chair, my apologies. Beth Colburn had her hand up when we were talking in regards to the summer program, but then we transitioned quickly into the next topic, and I did not get your attention to address her.
Beth, can just let me finish this vote here, and we'll give you an opportunity to be heard on the summer school program. There's a motion on the table to approve the.
Was it seconded?
It was moved and seconded to approve the.
It was, I moved it.
Somebody said second.
Did somebody second it?
If not, I will.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Kyle seconded it. I heard him.
So did I. So it's moved and seconded to approve the budget transfer to the accrued liability reserve fund in the amount of $750,000. If there's no further discussion on that motion, we'll put the motion to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 5-0-0. Beth, I'm just gonna finish this one other thing for Nicole, and then I'll get back to you on the school, summer school program. Nicole, on the school lunch deficit,
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the total deficit at the end of the year, so the total deficit ended up being about 186,000. However, there is some federal laws that govern how much we're able to keep in this account, which is it cannot exceed 2 months of average expenses. And looking towards next year, we start out not being able to resume.
Nicole, you cut out a little bit. Let me just see if I can take over. If you come back, I will step out. Final deficit was about $186,000. Nicole said there are federal regulations that allow us to put more money in than the actual deficit. We can put an additional 2 months in. So what Nicole is doing is using additional operating funds that were freed up because of her creative use of the federal dollars for custodial overtime. So she's actually overfunding the deficit to take care of the deficit for 21 and give us a 2-month head start for 22, because I have to tell you, we're going to be in a deficit again in 22. So, Nicole, I hope I explained that well.
Yes.
Nicole, what's the actual motion that you want? I'm willing to make it, but I'm not sure how to say it.
Right down here.
Oh, all right. I move the school committee vote to approve funding $374,614.34 of FY '21 school lunch expenses from the FY '21 operating budget.
Moved and
I'll second it.
seconded by Catherine. If there's no discussion or questions on the motion, I'll put the motion to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 5-0-0.
Roger had his hand up.
Oh, Roger. Hey, Roger.
I'm
how you
sorry,
doing?
Roger.
Mr. Chair, after the fact, can I ask a question? So it's great that we're able to reuse funds and pre-fund for next year, but this doesn't sound sustainable. We're gonna have to figure out something else so that we actually fund this at the level that we expend it. Right?
Well, we've been doing this, filling in the gap at the end of the year for a number of years now, so it's never, I mean, historically, it's never been sustainable. It's something that we always have to kind of do what we typically do. It's just this year we got a little head start. You're probably right. We're not going to necessarily be able to do that next year, but I guess time will tell.
Just a point of emphasis. Just the, I mean, I know we've done program changes and we've looked for state subsidies and there've been a lot of changes in reimbursements, et cetera. But it just doesn't seem sustainable. So we'll be keep an eye on it as well. Thank you.
Mr. Chair? I actually want to support what you're saying, Mr. Riggs, because my memory is that our deficits were nowhere in the range of this in the past. So if we were able to fill in, do you have a number, Dr. Conti, of what the average was that we had to fill in before?
I don't. I think not off the top of my head, I think we can find that out. I think the final deficit of $186,000 was reflective of, again, a COVID year where we had some additional labor costs, food prices are increasing. Nicole, you mentioned we needed additional packaging because we were packaging individual lunches and transporting them. So again, not a typical year. I also believe and support what Mr. Riggs said. It's just hard to use last year as a model. And I think we tried to explain to the committee that we were going to be over from the very early part of the year. And if we weren't clear on that, then I'll again be very clear now. We are going to be over in fiscal 22. We just have to watch it carefully. Again, Nicole, I think, was incredibly creative using the federal dollars. I think, Nicole, you worked a lot with Mr. Denizio over at the town, so I want to make sure I thank the both of you. And Mr. Riggs, we'll keep an eye on this, but if we have to continue to feed students in individual classrooms and make lunches work differently than we normally do, there's going to be some added costs that I hope that will come down once we get to a more typical lunch service.
Thank you.
I'm sure revenues were down because of the remote aspect as well, so.
Again, we didn't sell one lunch because they were provided by the federal government, and so those costs were fixed, but didn't always match the cost of the labor or the materials or the food.
Packing
So-
it to go to classrooms.
Yeah, exactly, so, anyway, it was a hard year to use as a model, both for transportation where we started and for lunch service.
Okay, before we move on to the next,
Did we vote? Yeah, we did.
before we move on to the next item in this section, I just want to go back to Beth Coburn, who had some comments or questions on the summer program. Are you still there, Beth?
I am, thank you. Sorry, I put my hand down because I didn't want to interrupt the financial conversation. So thanks for getting back to me. I guess my name is Beth Colburn. I will have 3 children in the district in the fall. I represent the CPAC, and I just wanted to talk about the summer programming. As a parent, I was so over school after COVID, and so I can't imagine as a teacher. So I just wanted to thank all the teachers and staff for pushing through, because I know that's summer is a very complicated time to work on programming. So thank you to everyone for that. Also, a shout out to Deb Clark. She is wonderful. But my question is about if you've ever done perhaps like an exit survey for parents of not only the community summer program, but the ESY summer program, about that feeling on success of the summer programming.
Ms. Colburn, I'm not aware that we've done a survey. I would need to, again, speak to the folks who run the programs, but I haven't seen one, so I think if they had done one, I would have seen it.
Okay, maybe just something to think about. And I would love to see that data too, just to make us even better than we already are.
I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Moving back to the item 8F on the agenda, to close the warrant articles. Bob, you have a list of warrant articles here that I assume the work is complete, and we just got to close them and off the books.
Yeah, and again, Nicole, I think, provided the information. Bob and his crews did the work. Nicole, my understanding is do they have to vote each one of these separately? Is that correct?
That's what we've done in the past, yes.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so,
And just for the, make sure everybody understands, under the number available budget, that's the money that's being turned back to the town?
That's correct. It's around 140,000.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll just take it from the top. Chair will entertain a motion to close out the middle school boiler design and construction warrant article with an available budget of $15,811.97.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 5-0-0. Chair will entertain a motion for close out the warrant article on schools walkie-talkie. Has an available budget balance of $3,202.56.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That also passes 5-0-0. Chair will entertain a motion to close out the school Francis Wyman Library furniture warrant article with an available budget of $475.35.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes 5-0-0. Chair will entertain a motion to close out the school project adventure warrant article with an available budget of $1,820.21.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
You skipped the computer science for all there. In the
Oh, I'm
list.
sorry, yep, okay. So the school, the project adventure one is closed out, 5-0-0. Entertain a motion for the school CS for all warrant article with an available balance of $681.21.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That also passes 500.
I get a chuckle out of the next one.
Entertain a motion to close out the warrant article for the Francis Wyman School air conditioning. It has a available budget of 5 cents, so
So moved.
Clo-
Second it.
closing out this one just in time. Moved and seconded?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 500. Chair will entertain a motion to close out the Memorial Playground warrant article with an available balance of $5,207.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 5-0. Chair will entertain a motion to close out the warrant article for the music department installation or installs. It has a balance of $786.89.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That also passes 5-0. And the last one is to close
The
it.
second last
Oh,
one.
I'm sorry, the second to last one is the Fox Hill Kitchen renovations and improvements warrant article, closing that out with a balance of $25,810.94.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
500. And the last one is to close out the Pine Glen roof replacement warrant article. There's a balance left in that of $86,114.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 500. All right, item G, lab capital plan account. Who's covering that one?
That's me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, as we got through the financials, again, I just want to thank Nicole and her department for the work. I think this year, like everyone else, they were incredibly flexible and creative with the federal dollars that we had available. And it was, like a lot of the teaching and learning was new, I think a lot of the aspects of financial management were new as well. So I want to make sure that we don't forget the business office and all that had to be done there. So thank you. Lab capital account, voters needed to approve an increase in the lab capital plan by $900,000 for a total of $4 million. Again, this is funds, it's a fund that the Lab Collaborative uses to support lab programs or in schools across the 5 communities of Lexington, Arlington, Belmont, Bedford, and Burlington. This money is used to support some of the FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment that are needed for lab classrooms in those spaces. Again, it's recommended school committee vote to approve an increase in the lab capital plan by $900,000 for a total of $4 million.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions on this article? Is this, the $900,000 just increasing the lab budget? It's not necessarily coming out of our pocket? This is just.
No, it's not even increasing the lab, it's increasing the capacity of their capital fund to $4 million. I'm not sure it's filled yet, but right now it's at roughly 3.1 million, and they need approval from all the school committees of the 5 communities to increase the capacity of their capital fund to $4 million.
I just didn't want people to think we were putting $900,000 into that account this year.
No, this is existing lab operational money that's funded, and it's would be part of lab projects moving forward.
Okay.
Burlington may be the beneficiary of some of these dollars when needed.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 500. Item 8H, full day of kindergarten.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I sent the schedules, or this agenda item is on. I think we got a question at the last meeting, what's going on with kindergarten, and so I think at that point I realized, Sharon, you reminded me that we hadn't taken a vote, so I'm going to request the school committee take a vote to expand the kindergarten program to match the time of the grades 1 through 5. So that's the vote that I'm going to ask for. I just wanted to tell you all a little bit about the process with the new kindergarten schedules. The program changes were developed with a K teacher from every building. Special educators were involved. We had 2 specialist teachers were involved. We had elementary principals, and the group was facilitated by our Director of Literacy, Renee Sacco. So they came together, I think they spent 3 days or 3 half days together, and talked about K programming in general, what they wanted to see, how they would use the additional time. They talked about creating a 5-day special rotation at the kindergarten level, like we have at the other levels. And they sort of arrived at a 5-day rotation of music, art, physical education, library, and guidance. So that's going to be the 5-day rotation. The specialist periods are going to be 30 minutes, so they'll be shorter than the specials for grades 1 through 5, given the age appropriateness of the special. And we believe the program changes fit with the existing labor agreements. Obviously, if we bump into a problem, we'll have to make some adjustments, but we felt like involving the educators from the very beginning that we would avoid that. So again, we reviewed with Sharon. You said, Sharon, there was no official vote in the minutes. So again, I'm going to ask the school committee to vote to approve to extend the kindergarten program to match the time of the grades 1 through 5. And again, we are largely filling that time by adding a special period. And then there was, I think, some additional reading and some other programmatic changes that I shared with you in the schedules that were developed by some of our kindergarten teachers and staff who worked on making the changes. So I wanted to thank them and ask you to approve the programmatic change.
Is there a motion to agree to extend the kindergarten class to a full day beginning in this school year?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion, questions?
I have one other point to make, is that the special rotation did require some postings. We needed a .2 music, art, and PE, so we need some additional staff at Francis Wyman because of the 5 sections per grade and the size of the school. We can make it work at the other schools, and we were, again, offsetting those costs because we are no longer making a kindergarten bus run in the middle of the day, so there's some trade-off in expenses there. So I just wanted to let the committee know.
I just wanted to say that I looked carefully at the schedules because I had asked about it at the last meeting, and I think everyone's done a great job. I fully support this.
Thank you. Anybody else? Martha?
I'm really pleased. I support the full-day kindergarten. I'm really pleased that that you put together a team to collaborate on what that would look like, because I know it is a shift and a change for the program, for the teachers, and I'm really glad that that was done in a nice collaborative way. My one comment, as this program moves forward and as it changes, I remember from many years ago when my children were in kindergarten, being just delighted with how interdisciplinary the kindergarten program is and has been in Burlington. And that was partly because they didn't have specials. They had music and art, and everything was integrated into the curriculum. And I think it's something that we should be doing more of throughout the school district. But I would encourage the kindergarten program to be trying to maintain all of the wonderful parts of the interdisciplinary, and perhaps, they can do it in conjunction with the specialists or whatever the issue may be. But I think it's important to remember that in kindergarten, we don't need to separate everything into a separate subject area the way we do in high school. And I would encourage them to continue all that wonderful creativity that we've seen all these years. I certainly expect it. I know that our kindergarten teachers are wonderful, so I just wanted to support that continuation. Thank you.
And again, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to jump in, but I'd be remiss. Our instructional assistants are also impacted by this, and we did have conversations with our instructional assistants, and they're vital to the quality of our kindergarten programming as well. So I didn't want to not thank them and to make sure that they knew that we were sort of considering their days as well.
Thank you. If there's nothing further, I'll put the motion to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 5-0-0. The last item on our agenda, unless anybody else has anything else they want to bring forward.
I have one comment.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure where to put this. Both tonight and at a meeting, I don't remember if it was July or June, Dr. Conti told us about the new Director of Transition Program, position, sorry. And I'm really delighted that we'll have Ms. Dressler working in that capacity, as I mentioned earlier. And Dr. Conti, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that she'll be working both with the students who were remote last year, who may have a very difficult time returning to school for any number of reasons, as well as all of our students and our staff to help support the social emotional needs of our students. As has been discussed tonight many times, we are 18 months into this pandemic and it isn't over. There are a lot of social emotional issues to be addressed. So I'm really delighted, but I also know that most people don't listen to our school committee meetings. So I'm wondering, Dr. Conti, if you could either explain to us, or I would encourage you to have every school building being communicating with all of their parents. I did run into a parent whose kids were remote last year who didn't know that we had a director of transition. So I just want to know, what are we doing to communicate with parents? And maybe it was planned for the first week of school, but I think that parents would like to know sooner than that if it's at all possible. So if you could just talk about that.
I think what will happen in your next agenda is Ms. Dressler has already worked with Robin Miliano to identify the students that were fully remote, the students that returned. She did, she looked at some demographic data of the population, so we know who the students are. She sent a letter to all the remote families who are coming back, and she sent a family survey. I know, Ms. Bond, that was something that you wanted us to do. So all the remote families should have received a letter from Ms. Dressler and a survey. And so again, if that communication hasn't worked, we're going to try other ways, but they should certainly be aware that we're asking about them. We had a meeting today with Patrick, Ray, Jennifer Knight, and Deb, Ms. Dressler. So we were talking about how to move forward. And again, I think we're going to be communicating directly with families who've been remote and transitioning back. We're trying to locate some families too, because I think we had roughly, and Patrick, if you're on the line, you can correct my numbers, we had about 640 students who were fully remote since March of 2020, and we've had about, 430 return?
Yeah, you're right on 427.
427, so we're trying to track down the students. Probably were maybe in a move to a different school setting or have done some other things, but we probably have about 150 students who we need to figure out where they are. So again, long story short, we're not waiting till September. I think we've started, and I think we're trying to put some of the data in a digestible form. We'll happily share that with the school committee. We want to know who our remote students are, and then we want to make sure that they know there are resources available to them upon their return if they're having some issues. We're going to tie in our director of mental health, which we also are using our federal funds for. So again, we'll try to make sure that transition back to in-person learning is as smooth as possible. Some of the anxiety that parents were mentioning during the mask conversation, I hope we'll have resources to help with that. So, okay, we'll get,
Well,
I hope
so
to get really
that's
in-depth.
good, and I believe I spoke to this parent before this communication had probably gone out from Ms. Dressler. But I also think that even if it's not families who had students remotely last year, that it would be important for all the schools to communicate with their families about these these new positions that we are using to support the students and the staff in this difficult year. It's not going to be easy this year either. Thank you.
Thank you. The last item on our agenda is superintendent's contract. I'm happy to announce that we met in executive session at the beginning of tonight's meeting. The way the superintendent's contract reads, that every year after his review, which was done in the end of June, we then revise his contract in accordance with his wishes and the committee's feelings of how the past year went and looking forward. And what we did through a unanimous vote of the school committee this evening in executive session, and the contract has been signed. We voted to increase Dr. Conti's annual salary by a 2% COLA for this upcoming year. And we also added an additional year to his contract. So his existing contract now runs through August 17th of 2027. So those were the two items that he had requested and that the school committee agreed to do. And like I said, the contract was signed this evening, so we've got you for another 7 years. 6 years, I'm sorry. 6 years. So I'm very happy to announce that. I think the school committee was very pleased, as you could tell by the reviews that we went through back in June with Dr. Conti's performance over this past year and over these past 10 to 11 years, I guess it's been now. 13, yikes. So I'm pleased to announce that we did sign that contract. We've adjusted his salary by 2%, and we've added another year to his contract. So I think we all look forward to another good year. So congratulations.
And thank you.
We did,
We
yeah, we already voted.
We voted in executive session.
Yeah.
You wouldn't mind taking a vote?
I move that we approve Dr.
I thought it might have a little thing, a little wedge in case, oh, we never voted.
I move that we approve Dr. Conti's contract
I'll second it.
with the changes of the 2% COLA and the additional year,
With an end date of,
with an end date of whatever he
August
said.
17th, 2027.
There you go.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that passes
I
5-0-0.
move we adjourn.
Move to adjourn, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.